All right, welcome to ZCT number 25, guys. We're a quarter of the way to 100. Kind of cool, I guess.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
We've done a lot of these. Today's topic will be all about Porsches because I recently got into Porsches, I would say, like 2 years ago. And in those 2 years, I've driven an enormous amount of different Porsches.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of your videos that you've come out with recently, I'm always like, oh, you drove another Porsche.
Another Porsche.
Yeah.
And I've driven a lot of like more like pedestrian Porsches, like base, whatever, Caymans, 911 stuff. But more recently, like this year, I've driven a lot of really exciting stuff.
Like GT stuff.
Like GT
That's
cars.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And so in my Boxster Spider video that I released not too long ago, I kind of alluded to, like at the end of the video, that I should just like talk about up to this point all the Porsches I've driven and how I rank them subjectively in terms of like the way they made me feel when I drove them.
Sure.
And it seemed like some commenters would like to hear that. So
got it. So you'll probably go through your list and you'll probably like educate me on like Porsches, because I'm not, full disclosure, I don't know the Porsche world all that well.
Right.
So I'd be curious to see now from someone like you who has driven a lot. I don't know how long the list is, but you'll pick and choose from that list. But like how, I guess at the end of the day, for me, everyone wants to know if it's worth it, right? So I think that's what I want to hear from you. Like once you go through these, like, yes, how much like subjectively you had fun with them, but then, hey, is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Yeah.
So I think that'd be a good format.
The price range of Porsches varies from anything from like 15K nowadays for like a base Boxster 986 to like 250 grand for like a GT3 Touring.
Yeah.
And
it's like, woof.
I mean, how can you ever say the 250K car is worth it as a driving experience over 15K? But it's kind of like objective, and I'll try to give my best attempt at like sort of like ranking them.
Sure.
So let's just start with my like Zygrene Performance Index, where I like sort of quantify all the things that make a car fun to drive, and I rank everything. So I just filtered it by Porsche, right? And I don't know how many are in this list, but it's a long list, and I'll just rank from top to bottom the overall ZPI score. So number one, tied for number one actually.
Okay.
The 2018 911 GT3 Touring, which is the 991.2 generation, which is the previous generation, with a manual transmission. I drove that, and then I also drove the same car, but with not the Touring package. So the regular GT3 with the wing and like the track focus model, basically the same car, but without the wing, more or less.
And the Touring one is like, is it more or less expensive?
Because they're used now, they are more expensive because people love that wingless look. And they only come in a manual, whereas the regular one you can get in a PDK or a manual. Both of the ones I drove were manual.
But is the Touring considered more track?
It's less track. It's less track.
That's so weird to me, because I feel like if you get a GT car, you're like, oh, I want the track and the performance. But it's ironic that the wingless version is more desirable.
Well, the whole point of the Touring is some people want that amazing manual and like the super high revving engine, the amazing brakes, but they don't necessarily want to take it to the track. They just want to enjoy it on a daily basis.
They want to flex
on people.
I see.
And like flex on people. So that's the whole point of the Touring. So those two cars,
good to know that context.
More or less the same car, tied for number one. After that, I have the 2015 GT3, which is a 991.1 generation that only came in a PDK. I have that ranked just slightly below.
So even though, manual and non-manual, like, does it matter as much in a Porsche? Because you have a PDK as your third one already. So like, to you, is that
PDK is insanely good. I did not find myself necessarily missing a manual with that particular car because the PDK is so good.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one ranked like 2 points below, right? And then tied with that one at 56. So the Touring and the 991.2 regular GT3 both tied at 58 points. The 991.1 GT3 got 56 points.
Okay.
And then tied with that, also at 56 points, was the 997 GT2. So a much older car. It's a 2008 model.
Was that kind of scary to drive?
I expected it to be terrifying.
Right, because
it's called the Widowmaker.
Yeah, it like spools up and Right? That's how I imagined. But how was it
It
driving?
has quite a bit of turbo lag. 530 horsepower sent through a manual transmission to the rear wheels only in a fairly light car. It was fast.
Okay, yeah.
But it was I pushed it pretty hard in the canyons, and it was very composed. I never felt like it was going to get away from me, even though I turned traction and everything off.
Oh.
So I was really impressed. The only thing that kind of was not that great about the car is the engine sound. Like you get a lot of the whooshes.
Turbo, right? So
yeah, but you don't get that high RPM like GT3.
what is it? What does it rev out to?
Revved out to like 70, maybe like 7,200.
Okay, so nowhere near the NA cars. Okay.
Nowhere near the NA cars, but super fun. Tied with that GT2 was a 997.1 GT3. So the same generation, but the GT3. So like over 100 horsepower less than the GT2. But what I liked about it was that crazy sound and the crazy throttle response.
It's the near instant, and you get to rev it out. That brings so many smiles.
Interestingly,
to a lot of people's faces.
Interestingly, I thought those cars would feel the same other than the engine. But the GT3, the 997.1 GT3, the suspension didn't feel as good as the GT2, which I had no idea.
Is there
why.
actual differences between
I have not been able to figure that out.
Okay.
Someone told me, I think the GT2 owner told me that the GT2 actually uses the suspension from the 997.2 GT3. So it's basically a preview of the next version of the GT3, whereas the .1 has like an older suspension. I don't know if that's true, but the GT3's suspension felt kind of loose and not as planted as the GT2 for some reason.
And you said same gen.
Same gen.
Huh.
997.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let us know. I know Porsche like enthusiasts, that's like sacred ground, and then like a lot of people can get into the comments and say, "Oh, this." So obviously we're open to feedback, and just it's good for the conversation, right? Let us know. Yeah. So yeah, let's keep on going to your list. You've already driven some really awesome cars, man. Like from a Porsche perspective. So let's keep going down the list.
So yeah, those three cars were tied technically for second place at 56 points. The 991.1 GT3, 997 GT2, and then 997.1 GT3. The next one at 55 points, the 2016 Cayman GT4. So the first model year GT4, the 981 generation. 6-speed manual. It takes the engine from like the Carrera S, and then it sounds a little better than a Carrera S, but it makes a little less power. So it's technically detuned. But it's got the aero, it's got the bigger brakes, the carbon ceramics, the track suspension, and everything. That was the first GT car of any kind that I drove.
Okay.
And I had a blast in that thing.
Yeah, I think when the GT4 first came out, that was like the one that was like, I want this one, kind of thing. And it wasn't like insane MSRP.
It's around 80, starting around 80, but more realistically like 90.
Right. And to me, a sub 100 GT car, like whoa. And then like that one was like really track focused in my mind. So I was like, dang, this is a cool car.
Yeah.
I know it's, we had in our previous ZCT, our two previous ZCTs, we had the whole like, mid-engine versus rear-engine debate, and Porsche not cannibalizing their 911s. So I like to see the GT4 so high up there. I think it's a car that if I were to get a GT car, it'd be that.
It's an amazing car, but the problem that I had with it, it's kind of like two problems. The first problem is like the one that everyone talks about, which is the gearing of the manual.
Okay.
Was so long. Like the second gear goes out to 82 miles per hour.
So you're like in second. If you're
in the canyon
driving
road,
hard,
you're never really going to get into third gear.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. It's kind of like the same problem that NSX has. Like the second gear is way too long.
Yeah.
So on track, it actually works fine. But on the street, if you're just trying to have fun with the gearbox, you don't have a whole lot of opportunities to use it.
You're not even going to hit third on a lot of places.
Most of the times not, yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And then the other problem I have with it is that for a GT car, I would expect it to have a really special engine. The GT4 engine's good, but it's nowhere near as exciting as a GT3 engine.
Yeah, and the fact that it's just like a Carrera detuned.
S, detuned. At least tune it slightly above a Carrera S. Like, why detune it?
Yeah, especially, and I guess that's why it's cheaper too.
It is cheaper. Right. It's cheaper than a Carrera S. Actually.
Yeah. I guess that, like, just mentally knowing that you have like an engine, that's kind of like the the E30, what is it, E36 M3 Euro versus
Yeah.
US.
Yeah, it's
Same
kinda like
exact
that.
thing. Like
Yeah.
you have an E36 M3 that is a crappier version of the one that Europe gets.
Yeah.
So mentally, you're just like,
Why would I want this? Yeah.
yeah, I don't want this. So
Yeah.
I get it from that
It's
perspective.
kind of a similar thing. Like if the GT3 didn't exist and I drove the GT4 just compared to everything else on the market, the engine would still be really good. But when you compare it to the best of the best, which is the GT3,
Fair.
the engine completely falls flat. And so
And when it falls flat on which point, like the notes, the sound.
the sound is very good. I would say it's very, very good. But the GT3, that like engines that rev to 9,000 sound way better than engines that rev to less than 8,000 in 99.9% of the cases.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's like a child, being a little child, like getting to that 9K. It's like exhilarating.
That
it's
8
exhilarating.
to 9, there's something
Yeah.
about that 8 to 9K range that like those are like the pinnacle of like engine sound. for
Yeah,
me.
I agree. I agree. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So anyway, that one got 55 points. Oh, you know what's not on this list because I have it hidden, but I already know because I just released this video. The next one got 53 points. No. No, I think it was around like 51, 52.
Okay.
But it was the 987 Boxster Spider.
Okay, yeah, I'm surprised that it's up. I mean, I just saw a little bit of that video, but it's this high, huh?
It's
A
that high,
Boxster
but
Spider.
actually, if you think about it, it actually makes sense because everything I've talked about so far is GT cars, right?
Okay.
The Boxster Spider is not a GT car, but basically it was like the car that sort of bridged the gap between a regular Porsche and a GT Porsche because it was lighter, a stiffer suspension, it was lower, a little bit like more power, and it was just basically like not the full track, like the full beans like track version, but like something that you probably want to track more than like a regular Porsche.
So you're kind of graduating, from this baby steps base models, and then you don't want to hit full GT, but this is a good in betweener.
And the reason that car gets such high marks for me is because a few reasons. Hydraulic steering. It was the last Boxster to have it.
Okay.
Way better than any electric rack that came after it. And the weight savings. So like a regular Boxster S is like it's like around a little less than 3,000 pounds, like 29 something, right? High
Okay.
2900s. The Boxster Spider, the whole point of that car is they shed a crap ton of weight on it. So it's only like low 2800s. That's the same weight as an S2000.
Okay, yeah.
And a
When you
car
put it
with-
that way, that kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was very playful then.
Super playful,
Yeah.
and it has 320 horsepower. So it's like just the right amount of power for that weight.
Dave, like imagine 320 horsepower in the S.
Exactly, it would be terrifying.
Yeah. Okay.
But in the Boxster, it handles it perfectly. It's got that really like nice fingertips, like light steering with tons of feedback, and the center of gravity is lower because it has that manual
the
canvas roof.
the convertible top.
Yeah, and there's only around 800 of them in the United States.
Yeah, when I was watching your video, you said that. I was like, dang, that's like hardly
it's
any.
super rare. Yeah,
So I'm sure they're like marked up.
I
or
mean,
like
I
pretty
think they're
expensive.
actually undervalued right now.
Oh.
They're
Well,
like
excited.
60 to 70 grand right now for a reasonable example, but I think they have potential to get close to 100K because they're so rare. Like
Yeah,
less
only
than
800. That's insane. So and then unfortunately though it is PDK.
No, manual.
It's manual too. What the
Yeah.
heck we not buying these for?
Go buy a Boxster Spider if you can find a decent one for like 60 to 70. They're like for sure going to go up in value.
And then, like to be ranked like right after the GT cars, that's saying something.
It
in
really
terms
is
of how
saying something.
fun in your mind it is. So that's pretty cool.
Because the owner. So the crazy part is the owner of the Boxster Spider also owns the #1 car in my list,
Of course.
the 991.2 GT3. And I asked him like, which car do you like better? And he said he drives the Boxster Spider way more because it's way more. You can rev it out way easier. It has a reasonable amount of power. Like the steering's great. Like he enjoys that car more than the GT3. So,
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of responsibility on the more expensive cars. It's kind of a shame because it's harder to enjoy them because they're
you're
expensive.
talking 200K
yeah,
for the GT3.
it's more than double, right? And so
versus-
I could see the enjoyment of
Yeah, it's
getting
not
a
3
Spider.
times the car as a Boxster Spider. For sure, it's not. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, so next up on the list, so now we're dropping a lot of points now. Okay, so at 49 points is a 2014 Porsche 911 Carrera. 991.1.
Just a regular Carrera.
Base model with a PDK transmission.
Okay.
In the interest of time, let's speed this up a little bit. We have much bigger list to go through. It's an all-around great car, but you can tell it's designed for mostly daily driving.
Like street driving, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great in the canyons and everything, but it doesn't have that hard edge that I want. So if we're talking purely about driving pleasure, that's why it's a few notches down.
Okay, sure.
Next one on the list, which is very similar story, the 2014 Cayman 981. Also with a PDK. Basically just exact same car as a 911 that I just talked about, but it's the Cayman from the same generation.
Right. And so, again, I'll keep asking this. The mid-engine versus rear-engine, you seem to enjoy the rear-engine more.
Yeah, it's interesting how that played out because I had the Cayman at 48 points, which is 1 point below the 911. But actually, when I really think back to it, the Cayman is a much better handling car.
But it's underpowered in comparison, though. Right?
Yeah. So the base Cayman has 275, whereas the base Carrera has like 340.
So significant.
340. Yeah.
Significant.
It's a big difference.
So maybe horsepower does.
It does matter
yeah.
to some extent. And
yeah. Okay.
The 991 generation 911, it doesn't feel as rear engine as the older ones. Okay. So it kind of bridges some of that gap.
Got it. All right. Continue on.
Next one on the list was a super heavily modified, completely track prep 2015 Cayman S, also with a PDK. So it was the same generation as the previous Cayman I talked about, but this one was the Cayman S version.
Okay.
And super prep for track. I had that also at 48 points. The parts on that car were insane. JRZs, full aero and everything. It felt great, but for some reason it didn't seem like it was making enough like the advertised power because it is rated at 325, and then he put some like power mods on it too. But for some reason, when I was ripping on it, it felt a little flat.
Interesting. Maybe I think that when you get a highly modified car for the track, you're not going to see too many differences from a daily car. Maybe except for like harshness in ride.
Yeah.
Until you get on the track, you'll see most of the differences out there rather than in the canyons.
Like I was driving in the canyons,
I can see why
couldn't
it's similar.
push it to the same level as you could on the track.
Yeah, for sure.
But I had it ranked the same as the base Cayman just because the engine felt kind of not that great to me.
Yeah.
Also at 48 points, so this is a three-way tie. 2006 911 Carrera 4S. So the 997.1 gen, just like my car, but it was a 4S.
So that's the all-wheel
drive and an extra 30 horsepower.
Oh, so this kind of leans into your whole ethos of the real world versus all-wheel drive, which is lining up to what you preach, right? So I can see why this is a little lower.
So the next one on the list was my own car at 47 points. So I actually ranked the 4S above my car.
But that has more. But the 4S
has more power.
So which also kind of is consistent to the data analytics. It's consistent with how horsepower does matter.
It does matter to an extent.
So here's my question then: like the all-wheel versus the rear wheel, what's the differences for you in terms of just the daily drivability and then the funness behind it?
I have no idea about the daily drivability. The fun factor.
Yeah.
I expected the 4S to feel really numb and heavy and just not that exciting in comparison to my rear-wheel drive car. But actually, what I noticed with a 997 generation, if you have a rear-wheel drive like base Carrera like mine, it understeers on power quite a bit.
Okay.
And with the 4S, even though it's heavier, it's sending some power to the front wheels when needed. So when you're coming out of a corner, I felt like it actually hooked up better and allowed me to get on the power earlier.
So you can be a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
So I can see why then it's the 4S version of your car could be a little bit higher because
so I ranked it 1 point higher.
You can have a little more fun in it.
Mm-hmm. Even though it's heavier.
Yeah. Okay.
So now we get into the 47s, which is unfortunately it's a four-way tie. But I have my own car, the 997.1 Carrera. I have track prepped 996.1 Carrera. That one was kind of an anomaly because it was one of the first Porsches I've driven. So honestly, if I went back and reviewed it again, I might have a different score for it. But I really liked it. And then the 997.1 Turbo. So that's a really expensive car now. That's like $80,000 to $100,000. Wow. But I didn't rank it that high, if you see. because the power is amazing, like 480 horsepower.
Okay.
Manual transmission, all-wheel drive, but the engine sound is awful. It sounds like a lawnmower.
Yeah, I can see why that's right. So wait, is this the first turbo actually?
That was no, not the first. There was like previous generations of turbo.
Oh no, I mean like on your
Oh,
list.
on the list, yeah, it's the first and only turbo. Yeah,
So wait, is it that because you haven't driven that many?
I haven't driven
turbos?
other turbos except the GT2.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it really kind of, and this is all leading into what you like personally to drive. Like the turbo is pretty far down, like in itself.
Yeah, the way I see the turbo is, as a daily, it's good because it's really fast. It's more comfortable than like a GT car. Softly, like a softer suspension. You have the all-wheel drive, but as a driving experience out in the canyons, it just kind of falls flat because it doesn't feel pure. It feels heavier. Okay. And for me, a big part of having a Porsche is having that amazing engine sound.
Yeah,
it's like
and you're not going to get
part.
that. You're not going to get that from a turbo.
You don't get that from a turbo. And the GT2, even though it has the same engine, whatever they did with the intake and the exhaust made it sound a lot better than the turbo.
Interesting. Okay.
So also tied with that at 47 points is a 2017 Boxster, the 718 Boxster PDK. So technically that is a turbo engine.
Okay.
4-cylinder. And so I think you already know what I'm going to say.
The
the sound was just
like
trash. It sounded like a weird Subaru. And I don't want my Porsche to sound like a Subaru.
Yeah, that's pretty insulting.
Yeah. But that being said, if it had a good engine, the car would have ranked way higher because I love the way that car drove.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
And then below that at 46 points was my old car, my 2006 Cayman S, 987.1. I liked that car, but a few of the things that I wasn't a fan of, the brakes weren't as good as I wanted. The shifter, I had a stock shifter. It was kind of floppy.
Yeah, I remember when I drove it. It was not the, like, you're used to, like, notchy notch. Like, the GT cars is like, really nice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the other Porsches that are higher up on the list are kind of like that one. But that one in particular was like hot dog in a hallway kind of, kind of thing. So.
Hot dog in a hallway, exactly.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I probably would have ranked it slightly higher. But either way, the Cayman S 987, it's a fun car, but just got to do a few things to it. Like upgrade the brakes, upgrade the shifter, and then give it like an exhaust because I felt like the sound was a little bit muted.
Yeah.
And then at 45 points, I had a car that's almost identical to mine, an 05 Carrera.
Okay.
997.1, but it had like some budget mods. So like BC coilovers and like a Fister exhaust.
Okay.
So this coilovers felt a little soft to me. It was fine, not great.
Almost like it should have kept its stock almost.
Almost, yeah.
When you have BC coils, no offense.
On a
Porsche?
Yeah.
That's actually kind of weird.
Yeah. It was my friend Wes. He wanted He wanted to make it look nice. He's not like a track guy or anything.
Oh,
he wanted to make it look nice as
okay.
long as it looks nice and like rides fine.
Okay, because I was like, wait a minute, BC coilovers.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing that like math.
It doesn't really make sense
it's
on
like,
a Porsche.
Why, you're almost getting worse suspension.
Surprisingly, it rode well.
Okay.
But I think those dampers don't last as long. So like you probably have to rebuild it more often. So that was at 45 points. And then last on my list is at 44 points was completely stock 1999 911 Carrera.
Old Carrera.
Yeah.
Is that air cooled or no?
No, it's still. I haven't driven an air cooled. Which is crazy.
No, I'm just kidding.
So I'm ranking all these cars. These are all water cooled Porsches because I've never gotten an offer to drive an air cooled.
I think those are all safely tucked in garages, unfortunately.
There's
so
one
expensive.
I might get to review.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's not even a 911. It's a 912, it looks like a 911, but it has like way less power.
Right. You get the ethos behind it, but without the power, it's gonna be ranking lower. Let's put it that way. A little less power.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because those air cooled Porsches are
they cost
skyrocketed in value. It's insane.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah, like here's the. I know we're almost at 30 minutes here, but in your mind, if you can pick, I'm gonna let you pick.
Oh boy. Don't make me do this.
make you pick 3 cars that are quote unquote worth it. So this has, because you kind of know the prices of these two. I'm thinking, for the enjoyability and the overall price, what do you think? Given your CPI, what do you think is worth it?
In today's market,
Yeah,
given that I'm pretty damn good with Porsche pricing now,
because you look at them all the time. Yeah.
Out of everything I've driven, not saying I can afford it, but let's say, well, it's so hard to say this because I can't afford a 2018 GT3. It's over 200 grand.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
who am I to say it's worth it?
Right.
But it's worth it. Like it's worth it because it's you get the.
I mean, that's
amazing,
the pinnacle.
It's the pinnacle.
Yeah,
You
it's
get
the
you
pinnacle.
get the sound, you get the power, you get the manual, and you get comfort, and you get like creature comforts and stuff like that. Right? It's like an all-encompassing like perfect car. The GT3 Touring. So like it's like $230,000+, but if you can afford it, it's one of the best cars.
Like, don't even mess around with the other stuff.
If you have the money, there is no better car out there, in my opinion, for like a sports car.
Then that GT3.
Yeah. So I'd say in the upper echelon of pricing, like let's say like 150K plus, that's worth
It
it.
just smashes everything. Okay.
In the lower 6-figure range, let's say
All right.
100 to 150,
Okay.
997.1 GT3.
Okay. And is that one? What is that? The manual.
Manual.
Okay.
It's you get the amazing Metzger engine, revs out to like almost 8,500. It sounds insane. It sounds better than the GT3 Touring, I think.
Okay.
If you put an exhaust on it, yeah. And it's raw hydraulic steering. It's lightweight. You feel everything. Not a great daily, but for a sports car, I think in that price range, it's worth it.
Got it.
That being said, they've skyrocketed in value recently. Like
Oh,
a few
yeah.
years ago, like 3-4 years ago, you could get it for like 90K. Now it's like 120 to 130 minimum.
Woo. Yeah. The whole market's crazy.
Yep.
All right. And
So,
last one.
We'll do 2 more. So in
Okay,
the
okay,
50
2
to
more.
100K range, as a sports car, 987 Boxster Spider.
Wow.
It's not a good daily. So if you want something daily drivable, just get yourself like a Carrera S, like a 991 Carrera S, and just call it a day. But if you really care about driving, the Boxster Spider is really good.
Wow.
I think it's the lightest car in everything that I drove here.
Yeah.
Outside of the modified ones.
Heard it here first, folks. Boxster Spider.
I think it's undervalued too.
going to the moon.
Going to the moon. And then in the sub 50K range,
This is what I would consider buying.
I'm going to say something controversial.
Okay.
If you don't have at
Let's
least
hear it.
50K, don't touch a Porsche.
Oh. Okay.
I've had 2 that were under 50K, and both burned me.
That's true.
Just not the Cayman didn't burn me as bad, but I got 1.5 sessions on track before the AOS blew.
All right. Well,
So
you heard it here, folks.
you heard it here. If you don't have 50K, just buy something else.
Got it. Well, I think that's all we have time for, but
Yep. So
Hope
let
you
me
guys-
know if you guys agree with my ranking and what other Porsches I'm missing. And obviously, if you have any other Porsches, especially air-cooled cars, let me know. Love to review it.
all right.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.